The Indiana Pacers are out of the playoffs, and if I'm honest with you, they look good. They look really, really good. And I think that they got one of the brightest futures in the Eastern Conference. I want to dive into that in this video. If you enjoy it, smash the like button for me, hit subscribe and the bell for notifications. Let me just start off by saying this team is built for the future right now and the present in a beautiful way. And I think that a silver lining through this is that guys have amplified it. They have amplified their value in terms of how the NBA sees them. And I want to kind of dive into that because I think it's going to play into how they navigate this offseason and potentially the following offseason. Let me start off by going through Tyrese Halliburton is every bit of a superstar, and he's not your traditional superstar in terms of dropping 40 every night, dunking on guys. But the way he's able to control the game, the way he's able to get his shot off, score, get guys involved, run the offensive system to perfection, is just uncanny. It's Steve Nash ish, you know. It's Magic Johnson ish, like the leadership, the basketball IQ, the skill level is so high. It transfers as a superstar scorer because of just how much he's able to direct with his skill. The second part of that, I want to dive into the rest of the roster is Aaron Neesmith. As a wing player, he showed that he can be an elite two-way wing. Now I know when I say two-way, it's a little bit because on his offensive side, it's still a work in progress. But he showed you that he can be effective enough. He can be Herb Jones enough, right? He can be um, enough of an offensive threat from the three-point line in transition, slashing to the basket, straight line drives at the rim that he can not kill you on the offensive end while providing great defense, not just good defense, great defense for you. Now, then, when you go through the rest of the roster, look at guys like Andrew Nembhard. Andrew Nembhard has completely reshaped how we see him as a player. I think people were high on his promise, but seeing what he was able to do throughout these playoffs, he looks like, honestly, like a mini up and coming Jalen Brunson. Like, I think people could really have that type of an outlook for him, whether it's hitting playoff game winning shots, whether it's dropping 20 plus points per game over the last two games as the starting point guard for a playoff team in the Eastern Conference Finals against one of the best defensive teams, especially perimeter defensive teams in the NBA against the Boston Celtics. Yo, I think what we're seeing is like, yo, this dude might have the type of trajectory of stardom that Jalen Brunson had, except he's actually a really good point of attack defensive point guard. He can be somebody's starting playoff level point guard, which has increased his value astronomically. It almost kind of reminds me of Jalen Brunson coming up behind Luka Doncic, right? Where it's like, yeah, you're not Luka, but you're still really good. And then you give him an opportunity, all of a sudden you go, oh, 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 you're that good. You're that good, right? And then you have the rest of the roster. Pascal Siakam is who he is, all NBA, all star level forward, who's just consistent. He's not going to give you 30 to 40 points in a playoff game, but he'll consistently get you that 22 to 26. That 6 to 9 or 10 rebounds with about 3 or 4 assists, and he can create his own shot. He performs above average in so many areas, and he plays with such a high motor that he produces at a high level, at an all-star level, even in the playoffs. And that's extremely valuable as well. That's why they brought him in. Miles Turner, he had a hot stretch. I think he looks even better next to Tyrese Halliburton. He's not necessarily, I mean, he is who he is. We all know who he is. But then when you get to the bench, you got TJ McConnell. He looked amazing in this playoffs, and in this whole playoff run. You got guys like Ben Shepherd, who looked real strong as a shooter, defender coming in off the bench. And then you had guys like Obi Toppin and Isaiah Jackson. And Obi Toppin, I think it's kind of a mixed bag because as good as he looked, I don't think he ever looked like a starting power forward for a playoff team. And that's significant because he looked really good at times, like really good at times. But he never looked dominant. He never looked like he could impose his will for an 82 game season into the playoffs. And I think that that's okay, but he still looks like a valuable, extremely valuable asset on any team, especially a team that needs more depth in their front court. Now, the advantage for the Indiana Pacers is they have so much talent. Remember, Benedict Mathurin, who would have likely been the starting shooting guard or gotten a bulk of the minutes as shooting guard for the Indiana Pacers, was injured throughout the entire playoffs and down the backstretch of the season. And the impact that we probably saw him making with his ability to get downhill, his ability to get his shot off, to be able to create for himself and others, get to the free throw line, was something that it was clear it was really missing throughout this series. And they needed a strong shot creator who could handle the pressure a little bit more than Nembhard and TJ McConnell were able to down the stretch. Because what you could clearly see is that athleticism, size, length comes into play at the highest level. When you have guys that are equally athletic, strong, physical, long, as in Jaylen Brown, 6'7", right? 218, 225 pounds, great length, right? 6'10", 6'11" wingspan. Then you got a Jason Tatum at 6'8", 6'9", with another 6'11", 7-foot wingspan, right? Who's also got great lateral movement, and they're committed to defense. And you got Drew Holiday, right? With Derek White. You get the point that that's when it begins to differentiate between skill and ability, and your physicalness, your physical athletic profile really becomes the difference maker in a lot of regards. Now, some guys can overcome it in a Jalen Brunson, but it took Jalen Brunson years to develop into what he is today, right? This isn't who he was back in Dallas. And so it's going to take Nembhard time as well. But you see the impact that a Benedict Mathurin could have had. And then there's my man, Jarris Walker. Jarris Walker, somebody who played for the University of Houston, was drafted, I believe, number 5 or 6 last year behind Asar Thompson. And he was somebody that I was like, yo, this dude's ready to come in and play right now. And I was really disappointed that the Pacers were not integrating him within their team flow. And I was like, why is he still in the G League? I know his talent and his ability. He can definitely play at this level. And when he did get opportunities, you can kind of see glimpses of it. And yet I began to kind of realize that, you know what, when you have Jalen Smith, who's in a contract year, Obi Toppin is in a contract year, Pascal Siakam is in a contract year, you got Aaron Neesmith, you got Benedict Mathurin, you got Ben Shepherd, right? You got Isaiah Jackson, you got Miles Turner. You have a team that is extremely deep at the positions that Jarris Walker would traditionally play, which is that 4-3 type of role. You just had too many guys there. And it would be unfair to try to take away minutes from an Obi Toppin, who you just traded for, and a Jalen Smith, both of them in contract years, along with Pascal Siakam, to try to develop Jarris Walker, right? And so I get it, but I always kind of said, I think if you look back at earlier videos, I said this is going to come back to bite them in the behind, because his level of defense on the perimeter at the forward position, he's somebody who can defend, who's going to be able to defend 5 positions. He's going to be somebody who eventually, I truly believe, is going to be able to guard point guards all the way through centers. And it was something that he did at the University of Houston. Anchoring a veteran team's defense as a freshman was something that's almost unheard of. That's like Anthony Davis type of defensive acumen and IQ. And yet he was doing that as well. And so I loved him for the Indiana Pacers. I actually wanted him for the Detroit Pistons, but Indiana Pacers got him nonetheless. All that to say is, I think he's somebody who's also going to be an asset for this team moving forward. And so when you think about the outlook of this team as they move forward, you have to be thinking they have the pieces, they have the assets, along with the draft capital, to be able to go out and make a trade. And this is the part that I kind of want to end things on, is who do they go out and get? Do they go out and get, who I think might be probably most accessible, is a Brandon Ingram, especially if he's somebody who's saying that, yes, I'll commit to re-signing with you guys, much like they did with Pascal Siakam, and say, hey, you know what? I'll give you Andrew Nembhard and do a sign and trade with Obi Toppin, and maybe do some contract fillers with like a Doug McDermott, right? And I'll trade for Brandon Ingram, a Brandon Ingram who's likely not going to re-sign in New Orleans. a Brandon Ingram who is somebody who showed he could do a high level playmaking, scoring, and at 6'9" with a 7'2", 7'3" wingspan, he's able to play extremely versatile and might be better suited for these playoff type situations. Now, he doesn't exactly have the great 3-point shooting, but I do think playing alongside of a Tyrese Halliburton might be exactly what he needs to really unlock that. Because when you're not playing with a great point guard who can set you up, you have to earn your buckets more, which he's great at doing in the mid range and is great for the playoffs. But throughout the regular season, it can kind of hurt you a little bit when you constantly have to create your 3-point look. Now, we also saw that last season, before this one, his 3-point shooting was actually pretty strong. Brandon Ingram, that is, right? And so you might be able to foresee and say, like, hey, if we bring him into this system with this team, with the talent around him, a bunch of unselfish players like Pascal Siakam, Tyrese Halliburton, right? You still got TJ McConnell, Benedict Mathurin, Jarris Walker coming into the fold, Ben Shepherd. You got guys like Isaiah Jackson, and you still could probably re-sign a Jalen Smith, right? You're going to have depth, you're going to have talent, you're going to have a lot of length, athleticism, and he can be perfect for them. Now, I know there's other guys out there, guys like uh, uh, what's my man from the Toronto Raptors and Chicago Bulls, DeMar DeRozan, right? You got guys like Mikal Bridges, right? You got other talented players out there, but I think Brandon Ingram can be a great fit so that when they get into the playoffs next year, right? You have a bunch of playmakers, which is really what you want to have. You want to have 3, 4 strong playmakers who can create for themselves and others, who can allow you to not have a defense be able to load up on any one player. Even though Tyrese Halliburton proved before his injury, it didn't matter who they loaded up on. It didn't matter if it was Jalen Brown. It didn't matter if it was a Drew Holiday or Derek White or Jason Tatum. He was able to score, he was able to facilitate, he was able to run the offense. And when you have a great coach like a Rick Carlisle, I mean, you're just in a great position in terms of your X's and O's schemes that was really working. They just couldn't get over that last hump. And so I think the outlook for the Indiana Pacers is extremely bright, right? Shining bright like a diamond. Shout out Rihanna, right? This is something that I think the Indiana Pacers should be hopeful about. And despite being swept, despite no longer being in the playoffs, I think they can go into this off season hopeful and excited about what's to come. But as always, I want you to highlight me in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. I'm gonna get at y'all next time. Peace.